Morena tamariki. Welcome to Chapter 4 of The Silver Sword. Before we get underway with today's reading, I just want to share with you how wonderfully pleased I am with the fact that everybody's work had improved during the week. People were trying their best. They were looking at the feedback that I was giving them, going back to their work, making improvements, and showing those improvements in the next day's work as well. So well done, keep it up. The quality of presentation is definitely on the improve as well, and you can see a lot of your reading work on our school blog or class blog, so go in and check it out. Righto, time for Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is called The Silver Sword. Now, Joseph has left the horrors of Zachna behind him and the lovely Polish couple that were helping him before he could escape. Let's see what happens. Chapter 4, The Silver Sword. It took Joseph 4.5 weeks to walk to Warsaw. He had lived in the city all his life and knew it well, but now, on his return, there was hardly a street he recognised, and not an undamaged building anywhere. The place was as bleak and silent as the craters of the moon. Instead of proud homes, he found crumbling walls. Instead of streets, tracks of rubble between mountains of bricks. Windows were charred and glassless. Public buildings were burnt-out shells. In the wilderness, people still managed to go on living. Joseph saw them wandering, pale and hungry-eyed, and vanish down paths of their own into ruins. They had made their homes in cellars or had dug out caves in the rubble. A few of them had even tried to make them look pretty. A bomb gash in a cellar wall was draped with bright curtains. Another hole there was a window box full of purple corsicas. Here and there a tree that had escaped blast damage sprouted with spring leaves. But the only really lively place was the railway. The Nazis had to keep this clear, whatever the cost. Never had Joseph seen railway lines gleam as these did. 8 lines of polished steel, along which day and night the busy trains poured. Eastward, with carriages of troops and trucks of ammunition, they carried war to Russia. Westwards, they brought back the wounded to Germany, and sometimes rich plunder from the Ukraine. Joseph spent 3 days finding the street where he used to live. The school and schoolhouse, his home, had disappeared. There was a house opposite with a sign marked Polish Welfare. He made some inquiries there, but the people were new and could not help him. At another house he had better luck. He knew the woman who lived there, Mrs. Carews, who had a child at his school some years ago. In a small back room he questioned her eagerly about his family. "The Nazis destroyed your school," she said. "What happened to my wife?" "They came for her in January last year, during the night. It was just after Dr. Frank called for 1 million foreign workers to go to Germany. She's in Germany, probably working on the land. I'm a member of the Polish Council for Protection, and we tried to trace her, but without success." "And the children? Did they go with her?" asked Joseph. Mrs. Carews turned away. "I don't know anything about them," she said. Joseph felt that she was hiding an unpleasant news. He begged her to speak. "I know nothing," she said. "That's not true," he said. "As a member of the council, you must have found out something." At last, with a weary sigh, she told him all she knew. "On the night your wife was taken away, someone fired at a van from the attic of your house. A tire was punctured and one of the Nazi soldiers were hit in the arm. But they got away with the van all the same. An hour later, they sent a truckload of soldiers with explosives. They blew the whole place up. The children have not been seen since." Joseph was too dazed to gasp this all at once, and Mrs. Carews had to repeat it. She told him of the efforts made to trace them, but it was obvious that she believed them to be dead. Without a word, Joseph got up and went into the street. For the rest of the day he wandered among the ruins too gaze to think. He spent the night in a burnt-out shell of the bus station. In spite of the rain which fell through the roof, he slept. He spent the next few days searching amongst the ruins for his children, with a kind of hopeless despair. At night he returned to the home of the Cruises, who fed him and gave him a bed. One night Mrs. Cruise said to him, "It's no use you going on like this. Your children are not alive. The house was locked before the soldiers left, and they must have died in the explosion. If you want to go on searching, search for your wife." "Germany's a large place," said Joseph. "What hope should I have of finding her?" "She might escape as you did," said Mrs. Cruise. "You must have known that something like this might happen. Did you make any plans? Did you ever fix a meeting place?" Joseph thought for a moment. "Yes, as a matter of fact we did. We arranged that if we were separated, we would try to make it to Switzerland. My wife is Swiss, and her parents live there." Mrs. Krause took his hands in hers and smiled. "There's your answer then. Go to Switzerland, and with God's help you will find her there." "But the children, they may still be here," said Joseph. He spent several more days looking for them. One afternoon, while he was poking amongst the rubble of his own home, he found a tiny silver sword, about 5 inches long. It had a brass hilt engraved with a dragon breathing fire. It was a paper knife he had once given to his wife for a birthday present. While he was cleaning the blade on his jersey, he noticed he was not alone. A small, ragged boy was watching him keenly. He had fair, wispy hair and unnaturally bright eyes. Under one arm he had a wooden box. Under the other arm, a bony grey kitten. For a moment, Joseph thought it was his son, Edic. Then he realised he was too small for Edic. He walked over and stroked the kitten. "What's his name?" he asked. "He hasn't got a name. It's just mine," said the boy. "What's your name?" said Joseph. The boy pouted and hugged the wooden box under his arm. His eyes were shrewdly summing Joseph up. After a while, "Give me that sword," he said. "But it's mine," said Joseph. "You found it on my patch. This is my place." Joseph explained about his house and how this rubble was all that was left of it. "I'll give you food for it," said the boy, and he offered Joseph a cheese sandwich. "I've plenty," said Joseph, and he put his hand into his pocket, but it was empty. He looked at the boy's sandwich, and he saw it was the one that Mrs. Cruise had given to him that morning, only rather grubby now. "You little pickpocket!" he laughed. But before he could grab it back, the boy had swallowed most of it himself and given the rest to the cat, who was now purring contentedly. After a while, Joseph said, "I'm looking for my family. Ruth is the eldest. She'll be 15 now, and tall and fair. Then Edic, he'll be 13. Bronnie is the youngest. She'll be 5. He described them briefly, told him what he knew of their fate, and asked the boy if he had seen them. The boy shrugged his shoulders. "Warsaw is full of lost children," he said. "They're dirty and starving, and they all look alike." His words made him sound indifferent, but Joseph noticed that the boy had listened carefully and seemed to be storing up everything in the back of his mind. "I'll give you this sword on one condition," said Joseph. "I'm not sure my children are dead. If ever you see Ruth and Edic or Bronia, you must tell them about our meeting. Tell them they must go to Switzerland to find their mother, to their grandparents' home. Tell them to follow as soon as they can." The boy grabbed the sword before Joseph had time to change his mind. He popped it into the little wooden box, picked up the cat and ran off. "I'll tell you more about them tomorrow," Joseph called after him. "Meet you here in the morning, and don't let me down." The boy vanished. Okay, only 4 questions for chapter 4 today, so you should be able to whip through those really quickly. Don't forget to give as much detail as you can, and then use ideas or examples from the text to back up your answers if they're there. Tomorrow in chapter 5, we leave Joseph for a while. In chapter 6, we find out what happened to the rest of the family. So today, for your third activity, I want you to go back and have a think about Joseph's journey so far. Your activity is to retell Joseph's journey in 25 words. You can't use 24 and you can't use 26. 25 words to tell us everything that has happened to Joseph so far. This will give you a bit of time to reflect about what's happened and then think about and make predictions of what could happen next to Joseph and to the rest of the family. Have a go. I'm really looking forward to seeing your summary.